Are you ready for the best damn radio show on the planet? Man Hour Nation, rise up.
You don't want to be every time, no. I would like to personally welcome you to Man Hour After Dark. Say that then. While I bring you the host, Mike, Buck, and Cone. You know what's coming to the stage. Sports talk than what you about to hear right here. I second that.
Go. You know that that's us when we talking about sports. Giving you facts on the field to the core. Tune in, we need the support. 1 hour too short, still listen some more. On all your stations, not dropping no music. Starts like Adidas, but Nike just do it. Down 4 in the 4th, we go for the win. Michael 2 seconds, we taking it in. Buck, Mike, and Combs, you know what's going on. Man, now we're After Dark, no LA, we the big spark. No 4th and inches, won't cut short. Got the best talking, it's all sports. Buzzing more than buzzer beaters. We coming live, all 3 speakers go.
And what is going on, Man Hour Nation? Welcome to the best damn sports radio show on the planet. This is Man Hour. I'm your host, BC Beastie, Brandon Combs. If you've not yet done so, because we've only been live for about 35 seconds, please click like, share, and subscribe on whichever platform you're watching us on. If you're watching us on Belly Up Sports, Tiki Live TV, or Roku TV, and you like what you see, head on over to youtube.com/Man Hour. You can subscribe for as little as $2.99 a month. Become a member of Man Hour Nation. Once you're a member, head on over to manhourradio.com. Click on the merchandise tab. Get yourself some hot Man Hour gear. We have hats, shirts, hoodies, joggers, phone cases, much, much more. Lots of exciting things happening on Man Hour. And now that I've tried to pay the bills, we got a great show lined up for you. We're going to talk about the NCAA brackets heading into March. We're going to be talking about baseball. Baseball's back. Man, am I excited. Baseball's back. We're going to talk about some of the rule changes, new playoffs. But we got some breaking news coming up. But before we get to that, let's welcome on my co-host for the evening. He is that man. He is from the podcast that goes over all old movies and recasts them. The name of the podcast is The Recasted Pod. Wayne G, what is going on, buddy?
What's up? Glad to be on the show again. Kind of, actually get some facts in here. Yeah.
So, it's kind of hard to talk facts when you do a show consistently with Michael Buckheister. But, I do my best to deal with the nonsense that is Buck. But, is what it is.
Well, I explained the show to somebody. I said that, it's a show that the key demographic is psychiatrists, because you guys don't talk about facts. You talk about how you feel. And so it's like, I feel like Lamar Jackson sucks, but you have as much evidence as the DA had against Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. See, I mean, that's Michael Buckheister, man. Deshaun Watson. I'm happy for the guy. I felt from the beginning, speaking of how we feel, I felt from the beginning that this was kind of something that was pushed on him by the owners out in Houston. And, when you get the grand jury to say, hey, look, there's nothing criminal here. There's not enough evidence to push anything criminal. It kind of leads to that fact, right? I mean, there's just not enough evidence to convict. And so, let the kid play ball. Let him get back to life.
Yeah, I'm happy for him. I, too, was skeptical at first, but I wanted to let the legal system play out. And it has played out. I can say I served on a grand jury. And this is how it works on a grand jury is basically you've got a room full of 12 to 23 people. The DA comes in, presents their case with unparalleled level of bias, and then tries to get and there's no defense in there. The defense can't object or anything like that. Nobody's allowed in there except for the DA, and he's going to tell you all of his fake evidence he has. And then the grand jury has to decide whether that evidence is enough to go to trial. And enough means probable cause. So if you've got an eyewitness, I mean, that's kind of probable cause. Anything. The fact that a grand jury threw out every single indictment means that the DA literally went into that courtroom with nothing, not a single shred of evidence.
Right. Yeah, and that's hard to do, especially when you think somebody's guilty. But speaking of playing out, Tom Brady has announced that he is coming back. He is unretiring already. We are about 40 days into his retirement. And he's like, you know what? Can't take it. Can't take it. I'm coming back. I'm coming back to Tampa. And I mean, it's kind of perfect timing, right, for Tom Brady, because if you're going to announce you're coming back, you might as well do it now, because they've got some key free agents that are deciding on whether or not they want to re-sign or whether or not they want to move on from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I think whether or not Tom Brady is going to be your quarterback is a big key to that, right? So I think it's perfect timing. I think he's letting all his teammates know, hey, just so you know, I'm coming back. And I want to be there with you guys. We've got some unfinished business to do, as he pointed out in his tweet. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, Tori messaged me and said, hey, Giselle must have pissed him off or something, right? Because all of a sudden he's like, nope, the time's not now for me to be back with my family. The time is for me to be back out on the field with my teammates, trying to win another Super Bowl. What do you think about this news?
I don't think it's super surprising. So I don't think it's, Giselle said something and this is out of the blue and he just changed his mind. I don't think he ever changed his mind. I think the fact remains that he wanted to play next year. I don't think he wanted to play in Tampa for one reason or another. And I don't know if they made assurances to him or if he's just like, listen, if I want to play, I have to play there. They're not going to trade me. So it is what it is. I got to play in Tampa. But I think he had every intention of playing next season. So it's not a super surprise to me.
That's interesting. So you just think he didn't want to play in Tampa, but they couldn't find a trade for his rights or something? Is that
I don't think they wanted to trade him. No, I don't think they wanted to. He wanted to be traded. I think there was talk about San Francisco. So there's a lot of stuff like that. But I think that the Tampa Bay basically said, listen, if you want to play, you're playing here. So he just said, all right, I guess I'm playing there.
Yeah, look, I'm sitting there and I'm watching the bracketology, the breakdowns on ESPN about the NCAA March Madness tournament. The brackets are out. We're going to talk about those in a few minutes. And it flashes briefly, like real quick, almost like they did it on accident, right? And it flashes on the bottom of the screen. It says, Tom Brady announces he will come back this season to the Buccaneers. I'm like, I wonder if that was an accident. Like maybe this was from like last year's bracket when they found out Tom Brady was coming back, blah, blah, blah. And then it popped up again. I'm like, come on, all right, that's twice that this thing has popped up. Something's up here. So I start scrolling through Twitter. I don't see anything. And then boom, there it is. ESPN breaking news. They break into the bracketology thing and they're like, oh, Tom Brady, by the way, has announced that he is coming back for his 23rd NFL season. And my jaw just kind of hit the floor because I didn't expect this. I thought that Tom Brady would be one of those guys that once he was done, he was done, right? Like we have had those guys in the past. Like you've had the Brett Favre situation where he retire, unretire. I believe there was, if I remember correctly, I think John Elway maybe did the same thing with the Denver Broncos. There are a couple other players that we've seen do this throughout time, but there has also been players throughout history, not just in the NFL, but Major League Baseball, who have retired a little bit early, and people speculate on whether or not they would come back or if they were really done, i.e. like a Derek Jeter, somebody who felt like people felt like he could come back and play another season the year after he retired with the Yankees, but he just stayed retired. He was done. And I felt like Tom Brady was more of that ilk, right? Like Tom Brady is not the type of guy to keep his teammates, keep his team, keep the fans, keep his family out there, not knowing what he was going to do. I just kind of feel like he went into his retirement and was sitting at home, and I just think something clicked for him, and he was just like, look, I having second thoughts. I think I still have a lot left to give to the game, and he proved it this last year. I mean, 5,000 yards passing. I mean, it's not like he was going out and he was underachieving or underperforming. I think he's still got a lot to give in this game, and this is crazy. This guy might play to at least 50.
Yeah, he might throw for 300 yards a game every year until then. It just seems like he doesn't really get older. He's one of the smartest players of all time. He's never going to have a cannon for an arm. He never has, but he's always extremely accurate and he can shred his own defense better than anybody in history. So yeah, just keep playing until you don't want to play anymore. Again, I think he had one more year. I think this will be his last year. This is the year I thought he was going to hang it up. I don't think he wanted to finish in Tampa, but like I said, he was like, I'm not going to play unless you move me. And they were like, fine, we'll stay retired. We're going to move on from you. And then he was like, all right, well, I'll come back then, because he had no
Yeah.
intention of sitting out this year.
So I'm obviously a big Bears fan. We talk about it all the time. I got the Justin Fields hanging up in the background. I've got the Bears. I'm a Chicago guy. You obviously are a New England Patriots fan. You like the New England Patriots. You're there. How hard is it to not root for Tom Brady to go out with a Super Bowl victory? Like, for me, like right now, I think that to me, the Bears are going to be a 7-10 team. We'll get later on. Maybe we'll talk about the trades and stuff like that. They're making the right moves, but they're going to be a 7-10 team. So for me, it's easy for me to say, hey, you know what? The Bears aren't going to be anything. Let me find something else in this NFL season to root for. And right now, that's Tom Brady winning a Super Bowl.
Well, you're in the minority. I mean, where I'm at, I'm actually in the majority rooting for him because he played here for so long. We all still love him, and so we want him to do really well. Obviously, we want the Patriots to do really well and win. But if the Patriots are out, then we want Tom Brady to win. So for us, it's different. But I do think that you're in the minority because I think the rest of the country wants to see him go out on an 0-17 season.
There are going to be a lot of mad fans out there. There really are. I don't think there's going to be anybody more mad than the teams in the NFC South. The fans of those teams are like, are you kidding me? Because there's not a team in the NFC South right now that looks like, I mean, this looked like it was going to be the worst division in football up until about a half hour ago when Tom Brady decided he was coming back. There's not one good quarterback in this division. There wasn't one really solid team in this division, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were on the precipice of losing half of their squad to free agency, and now I guarantee you a lot of these guys are going to decide to come back.
Yeah, I think they're the best team, and I think that there is talk about Deshaun Watson. We talked about him going to either the Panthers or the Saints, which obviously would make that division that much better as well.
Yeah, I still see, to me, man, and we were talking about this offline the other day, right? We were talking about where we go, and it makes, where it's going to make the most sense is wherever it makes the most sense for Houston and not for Deshaun Watson, right? And clearly they're not going to put him in a great position to succeed. If it were up to them, they would send him to the Jets and let him rot for all of eternity. But I still think that the best landing spot for Deshaun Watson is Pittsburgh. But now with Tom Brady coming back, if you are the Saints or if you are the Carolina Panthers or the Atlanta Falcons, you are almost forced to, hey, let's do whatever the hell we got to do to go get a Deshaun Watson in here, or maybe even a Jimmy G, because now in order for us to compete, we need a quarterback, and it still might not be good enough. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Deshaun Watson might be, out of all the names that you can mention, Deshaun Watson might be the one guy that might be able to go into a game, with Tom Brady in the playoffs and actually do something. He's just that talented. But you're almost forced now, if you're one of those three teams, to go out and do something. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens between now and draft day.
Yeah, especially because, the Saints lost the best quarterback in the NFL, with Jameis Winston. So, yeah. I mean, what do they do now?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I still like Jameis Winston. I'm big on Jameis Winston. I think that the Saints probably should bring back Jameis Winston. But I don't think that's going to be what happens. As Luke G chimes in, says, "What's up, fellas?" And says, "Got everyone happy he was gone." He like, well, psych, I'm back. And I mean, it's true. I mean, there were a lot of people who are going to be happy that Tom Brady was out, and now Tom Brady's back in. So it's going to be interesting. I know Michelle's going to be happy because that probably means Gronk is coming back for another season, and she loves her some Gronk. She even stole my phone when she found out the news that Brady was coming back, so she could look up Gronk's Twitter. So there's all sorts of people that are going to be happy about this. A lot of moving parts are going to happen now out in Tampa Bay. A lot of things that you didn't think were going to happen might now happen, like Chris Godwin coming back, Gronk coming back for another season. So it'll be interesting to watch. But when we come back, we're going to go to break. And when we come back, we are going to talk about NCAA March Madness. Give us 3 minutes. We'll be right back. If I can find the button. There it is.
Yeah. Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah. Please tell me all the bad, never good, fill my head full of every single doubt, yeah. Please say any negative thoughts, I pop off when I hear people say I cannot. I get off to the thought of proving everyone wrong, I won't stop to the top, so you better back off and get lost. I'ma stay loud, stay proud, never running out, never heading south. I'll be spreading out, call it word of mouth, can't put me down, I'll be getting loud. You can have your doubts, not what I'm about, have your fucking clout. If you're raining out, I keep making sound, go another round, bitch I'm legend bound, can't stop me now. You don't wanna fuck with me, a slow burn like a disease. Just tell me that I can and I'll show you things that you couldn't believe. Just tell me that I can. 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 Anything negative, cause I just wanna hear it out your mouth, yeah. Give me fuel, it's a tool that I use to go ahead and run my fucking mouth, yeah. I take shots, I take loss, I make shots, I miss lots. That's how you get big box, you get yachts, you swing lots and pop off a big shot. I ain't done chasing, got big dreams, bigger things, impatient. Who's at the top think they need replacement? Who's at the top think I'm gonna erase them? Face it, I don't give up quick, I don't give up shit, I won't give up this. Cause I know that I want it, know that I'm on it, I'll make it, I promise. You don't wanna fuck with me, a slow burn like a disease. Just tell me that I can and I'll show you things that you couldn't believe. Just tell me that I can. Just tell me that I can. Just tell me that I can. Just tell me that I can.
All right, and we are back. Apparently, Buck forgot to put the edited version on that song. So normally we would apologize to the kids out there listening, but let's just face it: if the kids are listening to this, they're already screwed.
I want to apologize to you because somebody obviously made you model that sweatshirt and that hat because you look totally like you're doing it against your will. Like your wife just told you to take out the trash. You're like, all right, I guess I'm doing this.
Buck didn't tell us what we were doing it for. He said, "I need you to do a video, a quick 30-second video of you with a hoodie and a hat on from the merchandise, and at the end of it, just say man hour, baby." So I went out there, I did something stupid. I thought he was going to use I don't know. I didn't know he was going to put on a damn commercial. God, I hate him. Anyway, so we talked about Tom Brady coming back, and look, he's back. It is what it is. But now it is time. The news of the day, ESPN, the brackets have come out. So now you got CBS had announced that with the brackets. And then I was watching ESPN with the bracketology. So that's why I said ESPN. But the brackets are out nonetheless. And there are a couple of things that are confusing to me. But let me ask you, Wayne, what is your biggest surprise of this bracket?
Well, the biggest surprise for me was Michigan getting in at number 11 and Indiana having to play their way in, because Indiana beat Michigan in the Big Ten tournament. And then you look at their record, they were 20-12. Michigan was 17-15, but Michigan doesn't have to play their way in. So apparently Juwan Howard punched one of the selection guys and got them to put them in.
I don't disagree with you. I think Michigan getting in at number 11 is kind of a shock. I wouldn't have had Michigan in my bracket. But for me, the biggest shock is a team that got left out. And my biggest shock is also my biggest snub, which is Dayton. Dayton was so damn good all season long. And for them to be left out of this tournament, but to bring a team like Michigan into it, I didn't understand it. It didn't make a ton of sense to me. I think Michigan is overrated. I think that Michigan got in because of, who their head coach is. And I think that Michigan got in because Michigan sells more tickets than Dayton does. So to me, that was my biggest surprise and my biggest snub.
Well, who sells more tickets than Indiana? And they had to play their way in.
Yeah, no, I get it. To me, I think that Indiana maybe could have been in at an 11 seed. I'm okay with Indiana having to play their way in. Look, one thing that I always say when it comes to the NCAA bracket is if you're a bubble team, you can't complain whether you're in or you're out. Don't be a bubble team. Be better than that. So I don't have any sympathy for bubble teams. I don't have any sympathies for Dayton. I don't have any sympathies for Michigan. All these teams that get left out. But I sometimes I do feel like there are teams that should be in other than the teams that do get in.
All right.
So let's get to it. Let's get to the West bracket over here. And let's just we'll start from the top. How about that? We're going to make our picks here on the West bracket. We'll go all the way down to the Final Four. So you'll know within these next couple of minutes who we have in the Final Four out of the West bracket. So if you are filling out brackets of your own, feel free to follow along. So out of the West, the first game here, we got Gonzaga and Georgia State. Who you got, Wayne?
I mean, it's Gonzaga. There's no way they're going to be a 1 seed that loses to Georgia State.
Yeah, I really don't see any of the 1 seeds losing this year. I know, it was one of those things we always waited for it to happen. It finally happened a couple seasons ago. But this is not going to be that year. I've got Gonzaga just destroying Georgia State in the first game. Then we've got the 8 versus 9 matchup. You got Boise State versus Memphis. Who you got?
I got Memphis. I have Imani Bates as one of the best players going into the draft. I think he's going to showcase it here, and Memphis moves on.
Yeah, I too have Memphis. I really like what Memphis is bringing to the tournament. I watched them in their conference tournament as well. I really like this team. I like what they're doing. Penny Art, they've just got this team on a collision course. I think that this team is very good, and this team may go far in this bracket. Hang on for a few minutes. You might find that out from me. Who you got at UConn, New Mexico State? Number 5 UConn versus number 12 New Mexico State. Who you got?
I'm from Connecticut, so I went with the UConn Huskies.
Yeah, I too went with the UConn Huskies. There is a lot of times where I do like to pick a 12 over a 5 seed. New Mexico State in this case, this is going to probably be the best 12 versus 5 matchup out of all of them. As far as how competitive it's going to be. And so I feel like New Mexico State does have a chance. I don't think this is going to be one of those games you could just throw to the wolves and just say, oh, UConn's the higher seed. They should run away with this. New Mexico State's a very dangerous team if UConn comes in sleeping, but I don't think they do. I think they're ready for this one. I think that they hang on. Then we've got number 4 Arkansas versus number 13 Vermont. Who you got out of this one?
Almost my first upset pick because Vermont usually does really well in this tournament, but this Arkansas team is really good. They're not Syracuse from a few years ago, so I think Arkansas beats them.
Yeah, I agree with you again there. I've got Arkansas moving on. This Arkansas team is averaging 83 points a game. Vermont is not a very well-balanced defensive team, so I'm going to take Arkansas in this one. Alabama versus the winners of Rutgers Notre Dame. Well, first of all, playing a game, Rutgers Notre Dame, number 11 seed. Who takes on Alabama?
I'm going to say Notre Dame takes on Alabama and loses.
Notre Dame has had a really good season, but I really like this Rutgers team. I like what this Rutgers team is bringing to the table. I like them so much. I like them to beat Notre Dame, and I like them to upset Alabama.
Wow.
So Texas Tech versus Montana State. Who do you got?
Texas Tech. I've always been a big Texas Tech guy ever since Bobby Knight went there, and the program hasn't dropped off at all.
Yeah, this Montana State team, let me tell you something about Montana State, okay? This team is a lot like that Arkansas team. They score a lot of points in every game. They haven't really played any competition, though, being that they're Montana State. This is going to be their first real tough test. I don't think they pull it out. I like Texas Tech in this one as well. Then we've got Davidson versus Michigan State, the 10-7 matchup. Who do you like in this one?
Always Michigan State. Always pick Michigan State in the first round. Tom Izzo does not lose in the first round, and especially to the Davidson team, unless they have a time machine and they go back and get Steph Curry.
Tom Izzo does not lose in the first round of the NCAA championship until this season. Davidson pulls off the upset. I like this Davidson team. They're averaging about 76 points a game. They're only giving up about 62 points a game. So I really like this Davidson team. I think they are very well balanced. I think what they can do on defense is shut down Michigan State. I like Davidson to move on in this one. I'm picking the upset.
All right. I mean, they're only allowing 62 points a game to teams in the Chef Salad Conference.
Fair enough. Then we got Duke and Cal State Fullerton. Look, please tell me that Duke doesn't go out. Look, I'm a Duke guy when it comes to college basketball. I do like Duke. I like Mike K. I really hope to see him go out on a winning note. But they lose a lot early in these tournaments in the last, 10 years. Duke takes on Cal State Fullerton, the 15 seed. Who do you got?
I have Duke. Like you, I think maybe it's a sentimental pick. We want Coach K to keep going. And I think that there is motivation for his players to do that. They all know this is his last year. They had that great ceremony on ESPN. We all loved watching it. I think they know what's at stake. I don't think they lose until much, much later.
Yeah, I like Duke as well. I'm taking Duke to move on to face Davidson in the second round. So let's move on to the second round here, the round of 32 in the West. I have Gonzaga versus Memphis. If I'm correct, you have Gonzaga versus Memphis as well. Who do you got in this one?
It's the Zags. I mean, Memphis has a really good young team, but they're just that, a young team. This Gonzaga team is always in the Final Four, and they return players every year. They're advancing again. Yeah,
see, I'm picking the upset here. I think that Gonzaga becomes one of the first one seeds to go down. And I really like what Memphis is doing. I've got Memphis making a big run here. I think that their 9 seed could have been a lot higher if they were in a different conference. But I am taking Memphis here. UConn versus Arkansas. Who you got?
I have University of Connecticut beating Arkansas. They advance. Again, I'm a Connecticut guy, so I really like them advancing.
Yeah, I've got UConn as well. I've got UConn versus Memphis in the Sweet 16. This bracket here for me is one of those where people are going to look at it and be like, holy crap. This guy's got who going against who? But that's who I got. Texas Tech versus you got Notre Dame. I've got Rutgers. Who you got winning this one?
Well, I've got Alabama at Texas Tech, and I have Alabama beating Texas Tech and advancing.
Ooh. You got Alabama going to the Sweet 16, huh?
Yep.
Well, I've got Rutgers beating Alabama, and then I've got Texas Tech beating Rutgers to move on to the Sweet 16. I really like this Texas Tech team. This Texas Tech team, they just lock people down, and they don't allow you to score a whole lot of points. I think that bodes well for them moving on in this tournament. At this side of the bracket, they're not going to play a bunch of very high-powered offenses until they get late into the bracket. So I think their defense is really going to help them move forward. So I've got Texas Tech moving to Sweet 16. Then we've got Davidson. Well, you've got Michigan State. I've got Davidson versus Duke. Who you got moving on?
So great coaching matchup here. Tom Izzo versus Coach K on my bracket. Coach K gets it, and Duke advances to the Sweet 16.
Ooh, I've got the upset here. Duke loses a lot early. I really, really like this Davidson team. I like what they're doing. I've always liked this Davidson team. They score a ton of points. They lock you down. This Duke team tends to just, when they get teams that they should beat, they find a way to lose, a la Virginia Tech, right? North Carolina to end the season before they get into the ACC tournament. Those are the games that they should win, but for some reason they find a way to lose, and I think it happens again in the round of 32 against Davidson.
All right, so we have much different brackets here going into when we get to the Final Four.
We do. So you've got Gonzaga versus UConn here in the West. Who do you got moving on to the Elite Eight?
Gonzaga keeps it rolling. They're just a really, really good team.
Yeah. I've got Memphis keeping it rolling. I got Memphis beating UConn and moving on to the Elite Eight. And then we've got Texas Tech. We both got Texas Tech moving on. You've got Alabama. Sorry. You've got Alabama. I've got Texas Tech. You've got Duke. I've got Davidson. So who you got, Alabama or Duke moving on to the Elite Eight?
Duke is going to face the Zags.
Duke versus, that'd be a great matchup. It'd be a great match. It'd be the 1 versus 2. I like it. You're not picking a whole lot of upsets. You're kind of boring, but that's all right. It's okay to be boring sometimes. I've got Texas Tech versus Davidson, and I have got Davidson versus Memphis in the Elite Eight. I've got Davidson. Keep it rolling. Keep moving on. Take on number 9. We got a 9-10 matchup out of the West in the Elite Eight.
Yeah, so you've got Cinderella versus Snow White, which I guess will be good for the ratings. I've got the two juggernauts going against each other, and of course I have Duke advancing to the Final Four.
All right, you've got Duke going all the way to the Final Four. I have got Davidson going to the Final Four out of the West. I don't know. I just love this Davidson team. I've watched them all season long. I really like the team that they put on the court. I like what they've got when their 3-point shooting ability is through the roof. They can lock you down on defense. Their backcourt is probably one of the best backcourts in the nation. I really like Davidson and what they've got. I think they drew a perfect bracket as well. They didn't have to go up against a Kentucky or a Villanova or a Kansas. And so I think that they are that much better than everybody else that is in this bracket. So I have got Davidson out of the West going to the Final Four.
Okay.
All right. So we are going to move on here and lost my train of thought here. But we are going to move on here and we are going to take on the South bracket. So the South bracket here, this one is an interesting one. I think that this one here, it has a potential for a lot of upsets, but also has a potential to be a kind of a boring bracket as well. And so we'll see what we have. Number 1, Arizona versus number 16, whoever the hell they're going to play. Do you got any of these teams beating Arizona?
Any of the teams, I do. But when we get to the Elite
I'm talking
Eight.
about this. Either of the number 16 seeds out of the playing game.
Oh, no,
does it
no,
matter
yeah.
who wins?
No, Arizona's moving on.
Yeah, I got Arizona moving on too. 8 versus 9 seed. You've got Seton Hall versus TCU. Who you got coming out of this one?
Horned Frogs.
Ooh. See, I've got Seton Hall here. I like what Seton Hall is doing. They too are scoring at about 73 to 74 points a game. I really like what I see out of Seton Hall. They always seem to be one of those teams that in the tournament is always at least playing in the second round. So I went Seton Hall, but I wouldn't be shocked if TCU does pull that one out. I never really see as the 9 versus 8. I never see the 9 seed as being an upset versus the 8 seed.
No, they're about the same.
So then we got number 5, Houston, going up against number 12, UAB.
Yeah,
what do you got?
Houston's going to advance in this one.
See, I've got UAB coming out of this one. A lot of people don't know about this UAB team. This Houston team is another one that tends to lose games that they should win. This UAB team is scoring 80-plus points a game. I don't think Houston has what it takes to shut them down. I think UAB outscores them. I see this as being a high-scoring game, but I think UAB wins this one something like 87 to 80, and they move on.
All right.
So then we've got Illinois versus Chattanooga. Who you got?
I have Illinois moving on.
I as well have Illinois moving on. This Illinois team, there's just something about them. I don't really like them, but I don't hate them. Like I don't know where to put them. I can't really pin my hat on what this Illinois team is. This is a team that could either be in the Final Four or they could be a second round exit. But I'm taking Illinois as well in this game against Chattanooga. We got Colorado State versus the 11 seed Michigan. We both were surprised that Michigan was an 11 seed. Do they get past Colorado State?
So it's funny because this is a 6 versus 11, 5 versus 11.
Yeah, 6 versus 11.
I'm still going, even though I crapped on them earlier. Michigan, I think, beats Colorado State.
See, I'm going with Colorado State here. I think Michigan is very overrated. This is one of those games for me. I think I picked this one, Colorado State, just because of how much I dislike Michigan. So I went with Colorado State in this one. I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan does beat Colorado State. But I went with Colorado State. Oh, then we got the 3 versus 14. Tennessee versus Longwood. Does Longwood got a shot?
They don't have a shot at all. 0% chance of winning this thing. A lot of people thought Tennessee should have been a 2 seed. So I think Tennessee beats them.
Well, Longwood was 15-1 in their conference. I don't know what conference that is, so don't ask me.
Mikey Car Care Conference.
They're averaging about 75 points a game. Tennessee, I like what Tennessee's doing. They just won their first SEC title, and I believe it was something like 40 years. So give me Tennessee to beat Longwood. Then the 7 versus 10. Ohio State versus Loyola Chicago. Who you got?
Again, there's no Bo Kimball or Hank Gathers, so I'm taking Ohio State.
This is a very evenly matched teams. This game here is about as even as they come. And both teams average 73.8 points a game. And both teams give up 68.5 points a game. This is one of those games that I think is going to come down to the wire. And I can't go against Sister Jean. I just can't do it. Loyola Chicago is going to make another run. Give me Loyola Chicago to beat Ohio State.
All right, well, we know how much I hate the if game, but I really feel like if Ohio State played in Loyola's division, they would average 90 points per game and give up 50.
Fair enough, but look, this is the tournament, and things happen tournament time, and I think this is one of those things that happens during tournament time. Loyola Chicago's going to make a run. Sister Jean's going to do a whole lot of praying, and somehow, some way, Loyola Chicago's going to figure out a way to beat Ohio State.
All right.
Villanova, the 2 seed versus Delaware, the 15 seed. Who you got?
Villanova, no, it's a no-brainer. Again, this is another team that doesn't really lose in the first round.
Yeah, I like Villanova in the first round. I do think Delaware could have been higher than a 15 seed, though. So it's one of those ones for me, too, that if Villanova goes down, I wouldn't be extremely shocked to see Villanova lose to Delaware. I think Delaware's got what it takes to be Villanova, but I'm taking Villanova in this one. So we move on to the round of 32. I've got Arizona versus Seton Hall. You've got Arizona versus TCU. Who you got moving on?
Arizona keeps it going.
Yeah, I've got Arizona keeping it going as well. Then I've got UAB versus Illinois. You've got Houston versus Illinois. Who you got moving on?
Illinois moves on.
I've got UAB. I really like this UAB squad. They score a ton of points. It's going to be hard for anybody in this bracket to stop them. Give me the 12 seed UAB to move on to the Sweet 16. Colorado State versus, well, you've got Michigan. I've got Colorado State versus Tennessee. Who's moving on?
I do think it's funny that your Sweet 16, it doesn't surprise me that it's made up of like 12 Cinderellas. And
I don't have 12 Cinderellas. I've got Arizona in there.
I am going with Tennessee over Michigan.
All right, I've got Colorado State moving on. I've got Colorado State beating Tennessee, and then I've got Loyola Chicago versus Villanova. You got Ohio State versus Villanova. Who you got moving on?
Villanova is moving on.
I'm riding with Sister Jean, baby. Give me Loyola Chicago in the Sweet 16. Shut your mouth, Wayne. We got in the Sweet 16. I've got Arizona versus UAB. You have got Arizona versus Houston. Who moves on?
Well, I've got Arizona versus Illinois.
Oh, sorry, Illinois. Sorry.
That's right. And I have Arizona moving on. But I can imagine you have UAB because that seems to be where you're trending here.
I do not. I have Arizona moving on to the Elite Eight to face Loyola Chicago. I've got Loyola Chicago going to another Elite Eight, beating Colorado State in the Sweet 16. Who you got? Colorado State, or I believe who you got there? Villanova?
Yeah, I've got Tennessee over Villanova. So Tennessee moves on to face Arizona.
Tennessee versus Arizona, a 1 versus 3. Doesn't surprise me that you got such a boring bracket at all. You got a 1 versus 2 and a 1 versus 3.
That's usually how it plays out.
God, it's not usually how it plays out. Didn't Loyola Chicago go to the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8 like 2 years ago?
I don't know what they did.
It's
Loyola Chicago. Who cares?
Fair enough. All right, let's move on over to the East bracket.
Hey, what about Arizona versus Tennessee?
Oh, sorry. I had Loyola Chicago going to the Elite Eight over Arizona. Who you got? Arizona over Tennessee?
I have Tennessee going to the Final Four.
Tennessee in the Final Four. Oh, God. Your bracket's going to be busted week 2. Day 2, I should say. Anyway, moving on to the East bracket. We've got number 1 Baylor versus number 16 Norfolk State. Who you got?
Yeah, Baylor. It's an easy one.
Yeah, no question for me. Baylor in this one, they are going to move on. Again, no 16 seed is going to be the 1 seed this year. There's a lot of parity in college basketball this year, but not that much parity. Number 8, North Carolina, the Tar Heels versus number 9, Marquette.
North Carolina. I think that this is a team that's got, I think, 3 or 4 first-round picks. I know they don't always play up to their competition, but they're a really good team. They move on.
I've got Marquette in this one. I think they beat North Carolina. I like Marquette. They score a lot of points. I really like the high-powered offenses in this tournament because not a lot of these teams, especially North Carolina, plays very good defense. So give me Marquette to beat North Carolina in this one and move on. We got St. Mary's versus either the winner of Wyoming versus Indiana. Who do you got?
I've got Indiana winning the play-in and then Indiana winning the game. So Indiana advances.
Wow. Yeah, look, I don't think that it's going to be very tough to beat St. Mary's in this bracket. I really like this St. Mary's squad. They've done it all season long. I think they're going to do it again. Give me St. Mary's over whoever they play, whether it's Wyoming, Indiana. I agree with you. I think Indiana beats Wyoming, but then I think St. Mary's beats Indiana. UCLA, the 4 seed versus number 13, Akron.
It's going to be UCLA. I don't believe in the Akron team.
Yeah, I'm going with UCLA here as well. Then we got number 6, Texas versus number 11, Virginia Tech. Who you got?
Virginia Tech with the upset. They played really good in the ACC tournament. They keep it going.
Yeah, I've got Virginia Tech in this one too. This is going to be one of those boring brackets. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of surprises here. And again, I've got Marquette moving on, but a 9 over an 8 really isn't an upset to me. Virginia Tech, I think, is the only real upset in this bracket. This Texas team, I never believe in Texas teams. I don't know what it is when it comes to tournament time. They just always find a way to lose. Virginia Tech is playing very well. They just beat Duke to win the ACC title. Give me Virginia Tech to keep it rolling. Then we've got Purdue versus Yale. Who you got?
I've got Yale. The Ivy League schools have that backdoor cut offense, whether it's Princeton or Yale. They always do really well in the first round. So give me Yale.
You know, this one was tough for me. So this Purdue team, I don't necessarily like them a whole lot. I think that they are one of those teams that is prone to be upset in the first round. We have got a guy who we've talked a few times to on the show who is a freshman at Purdue playing on this basketball team. It was pretty cool watching him celebrate, even though he is redshirted. It is cool watching him celebrate with the team, watching him during the selection show and Trey Kaufman. But I picked Purdue in this game just because I just don't think that the Ivy League school has what it takes to beat this Purdue team. I think this Purdue team is a little bit more battle tested than Yale is. So give me Purdue to move on to face Virginia Tech. Then we've got Murray State versus San Francisco.
So I'm going with Bill Russell's alma mater in San Francisco.
I'm going with Murray State. Look, a lot of people don't know about this Murray State team, but you're about to. This team was 30-2 this year. This team is a good squad. They haven't lost in a long time. I think that they're going to keep it going. Give me Murray State here to move on to the second round. We got Kentucky versus St. Peter's. Who you got?
Kentucky. I think they got the coach and they got the stat. They got the
Come
players.
on, you're not going to go with St. Peter's?
Nope.
God, St. Peter's going to strike you down. I'm going Kentucky too, though. So in the second round, who you got? You got Baylor versus North Carolina. Who you got moving on?
North Carolina beats number 1 Baylor.
Ooh, I like it. I like it. Finally an upset. Finally a little bit of pepper to your spices there. I've got Baylor versus Marquette. I've got Baylor moving on. I'm the boring one in this bracket. I think Baylor beats Marquette. Marquette's, season takes a turn. I think Baylor wins that one big, actually. Then I have got St. Mary's versus UCLA. You have got Indiana versus UCLA. Who you got moving on?
Indiana is going to face UNC in the Sweet 16.
You've got an 8 versus an 11 T seed in the Sweet 16. What is going on, Wayne?
I just like Indiana. I really like them a lot.
You started drinking halfway through your bracket selections, didn't you?
I did not. I am, though. I do pick my picks like the dog that like knocks the ball into the little basket.
All right. I've got St. Mary's versus UCLA. I've got St. Mary's moving on to take on Baylor in the Sweet 16. Next round, we've both got Virginia Tech. Well, no, I've got Virginia Tech versus Purdue. You've got Virginia Tech versus Yale. Who moves on?
Virginia Tech moves on.
Virginia Tech moves on. So let me get this straight. You've got an 8, a 12, an 11, and a 14 seed.
Yeah,
wow.
Sounds about right.
All right. So you've got Virginia Tech moving on.
I do.
I too have Virginia Tech moving on to the Sweet 16 over Purdue. I think that's where Purdue's run ends. And then we've got Kentucky. You've got San Francisco. I've got Murray State. Who you got moving on?
I've got Kentucky. It doesn't matter which one of those teams they play. They're moving on.
Yeah, look, Murray State has played a real strong season. Again, I mentioned earlier they are 30-2 this season. They haven't lost in a long time. They are this team is fun to watch. If you have not watched them all season long, promise me, find out when this game is on, the 7 versus 10 seed, and make sure you watch this game because this Murray State team is a lot of fun to watch. I think they got into the wrong bracket. Had they been in the West, or had they been in the South, I think that I might have had Murray State going all the way to the Final Four. But the fact that they have to go on and play against Kentucky, I just think Kentucky's too good. Give me Kentucky to move on to the Sweet 16.
All right.
So I've got Baylor versus St. Mary's in the Sweet 16, and I've got St. Mary's moving on. You've got something like the Perkins School for the Blind versus the Gazette. I mean, who you got again?
Yeah, I've got two of the greatest college franchises in the history of the game in UNC and Indiana, and I have UNC advancing.
So you've got UNC going on to the Elite Eight. I've got St. Mary's, and you've got we've both got Virginia Tech in the Sweet 16 against Kentucky. Who do you got moving on out of that game?
Coach Cal, Kentucky.
Yeah, I'm going with Kentucky too. I just think Kentucky is just too damn good. So I've got Kentucky versus St. Mary's in the Elite Eight. Kentucky to me is just too damn good. So I am going with Kentucky. And this Kentucky team is just so damn good. I got Kentucky going all the way to the Final Four.
Yeah, I do as well. They're going to face Duke in my bracket.
Ooh. So already letting us know who's going to the championship. All right.
Yeah, we already picked that bracket, dummy. Like, who do you have in the Final Four?
I got Kentucky versus Davidson. Just kidding. All right. So we've got the Midwest here. We've got the 1 seed Kansas. It doesn't matter who wins the playing game. Kansas is moving on here. I think we both got the same thing, right?
Yep, agreed.
All right. And then the 8 seed San Diego State versus 9 seed Creighton. Who you got?
I got San Diego State.
Yeah, I got Creighton. I'll be honest here. I don't know enough about San Diego State. I do know a lot about Creighton, and this Creighton team is like the Golden State Warriors, right? They just shoot threes and they shoot the lights out with the threes. I'm taking Creighton over San Diego State. Then we've got 12 seed Richmond versus the 5 seed Iowa. Big Ten powerhouse. Who you got in this one?
Richmond Spiders with the upset.
I've got the Richmond Spiders too. I feel you there. I like Richmond in this one. Then we've got Providence versus South Dakota State. Who do you got?
I've got Providence.
I've got South Dakota State moving on. This South Dakota State is scoring nearly 90 points a game. This team is so damn good. I think Providence is highly overrated. I don't think that their defense is enough to stop South Dakota State from scoring. I've got a 12 versus 13 seed in the round of 32. So I've got Richmond versus South Dakota State. LSU, the 6th seed versus number 11 Iowa State. Who you got?
LSU.
I as well have LSU. Then we've got Colgate versus Wisconsin. 14 versus 3. Who you got?
Yeah, Colgate's again, and essentially an Ivy League school, but I have them getting beat by Wisconsin.
See, I've got this Ivy League school winning. I've got Colgate, who, again, is a team that scores 90 points a game. I think this Wisconsin team is highly overrated. I don't think they're as good as anybody says that they are. I'm taking Colgate in this one. Give me LSU versus Colgate in the round of 32. We've got the number 7 seed USC versus number 10 Miami. Two schools people love to hate. Who you got?
USC Trojans.
Yeah, I've got USC moving on in this one as well. I think Miami got in just because they were Miami. Auburn versus Jacksonville State. I don't think there's any secret. We probably both got Auburn winning here, unless you've got something crazy going on.
Nope, I got Auburn as well.
Yeah. So I've got Kansas versus Creighton. I've got Kansas moving on. You've got Kansas versus San Diego State. Who you got?
Kansas moves on.
Kansas moves on. I've got Richmond versus South Dakota State. You've got Richmond versus Providence.
Providence ends the Cinderella story.
I've got Richmond moving on over South Dakota State. LSU versus Colgate. You've got LSU versus Wisconsin. I've got LSU moving on. Doesn't matter who they play. Who you got?
LSU moving on.
I mean, we both got LSU moving on. Look at that. We kind of agree. It's kind of scary. Auburn versus USC. I've got Auburn moving on. Who you got?
I do as well. Auburn.
All right. So we both got Auburn versus LSU in the Sweet 16. Who you got there?
Auburn.
I as well have Auburn. Then I've got Kansas versus Richmond. You've got Kansas versus Providence. Who moves on?
Kansas.
I've got Kansas as well. We've got what's the only bracket that I have a 1 versus a 2 seed in the Elite 8. And that number 1 seed goes down as well. I don't have any number 1 seeds in the Final Four. I've got Auburn beating Kansas in the Elite 8.
I have Kansas advancing to play Tennessee.
I've got Auburn advancing to play Loyola Chicago. So we move on to our national championship Final Four picks. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will tell you what those picks are. Let's see what's going on in the comments first before we move on. See how much flow we got. Football fan says, don't forget Brady's last touchdown ball sold in auction yesterday for $547,000. Oops. That is brutal. Imagine being that guy.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what depreciation will do.
And being that guy tonight is probably, man, if you thought you were having a bad day, you could have been the guy who spent $547,000 on a football that you thought was the last one for Tom Brady to ever throw.
It would be impossible for me to feel bad for somebody who spent $547,000 on a football, no matter what football it was.
That's a fair statement. Fair statement. All right, so we are going to be back. When we come back, we will give you our Final Four picks. We will tell you who the champions are going to be. We've got some baseball talk coming up as well. Stay with us. We'll be back. Give us 2 minutes.
Hey gang, it's Commissioner Cooper from TSS Fantasy. We are the fantasy show of the people. That means we give the people what they want. Expert fantasy advice, leading medical and legal analysis, free contests, and innovative games to keep you entertained. Watch us live with the Tiki Live app on the Belly Up Sports channel, subscribe to us on YouTube, or follow us on all social media platforms. Visit TSSFantasy.com today for all the latest updates from the fantasy show of the people. We put the fun in fantasy.
Yeah!
Instead of the mayo
over sour cream, yeah.
Right. That's because you have high cholesterol. Okay.
If you drafted Julio Jones,
you got ghosted.
This is amazing. TSS Fantasy is like an orgasm. If I had a cigarette, I'd smoke it. I'm pumped to be here. This is the show of shows.
TSS Fantasy, the fantasy show of the people.
wanna be the best in the game, invest in my name, check no restraints, I'm obsessed with the pain. I ingest, I retain, assess and I change, possessed by the thought I'll be free one day from society's restraints. Money, clout and fame, mud, disease, a plague. We all love to hate, have to play the game, have to make a name. All our insecurities are on display. This is war with the enemy, think that it was meant to be. Living in a time where disease is on every screen. I won't let them fester me, I know most are festering. Negativity is a plague for the mentally weak. No mercy, all I got is working. Never stop searching, never quench the thirsty. I'm toxic and psychotic, with this logic you can't stop it. It's been chronic since I was a boy, so neurotic and chaotic. Go!
To last with the webs I'm weaving, I could change the past with all I'm achieving. Got my foot on gas, never stop competing. If you break like glass, then this life's gonna eat 'em.
All right, we are back. And I don't know, do you get into any of these like bracket pools? Do you get in any of these at all? Do you fill out brackets and get into pools at work or with friends or anything? You're on mute. Still on mute.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you now.
Something with this wire. Yeah, no. So I do a like a $5 bracket at work, and then I'll usually do all the free ones like ESPN and CBS and whatnot.
Yeah, so I do, different pools. I get into some of the squares. I get into, some of these pools where you randomly get a team, and the team that goes the furthest, wins the pool or whatnot. So I actually, while we were on break, got a text message from a buddy of mine that I'm in the pool with. His name is Richie, and he sent me my 2 teams that I got for the pool, a random draw. And if you remember my bracket, I said that Colgate was going to upset in the first round, but I didn't think they'd get past in the second round. And I had Gonzaga as being the first number 1 seed to lose and having them lose to Memphis. So, funny story, he texts me and says, hey, your teams are Colgate and Gonzaga.
Awesome.
It's not awesome, Wayne. Now I'm changing my entire bracket now. Gonzaga's winning the title. Colgate versus Gonzaga in the championship. That's what it's going to be.
Okay. I'm sorry, having so many issues with this friggin' thing.
No problem. So we're getting here now. We've gotten to our final 4 here, and in our final 4, in my final 4, I've got Loyola, Chicago versus Auburn, and Kentucky versus Davidson. I've got 2 10 seeds versus 2 2 seeds. What do you think about that?
I think you're nuts, and I don't think it's going to happen.
All right. Who you got in your final 4?
Duke versus Kentucky and Tennessee versus Kansas.
All right. In my national championship game, the Cinderella stories are over. I have got Kentucky versus Auburn, 2 number 2 seeds going at it for the national championship. I think that this Kentucky team is just too damn good. I think that Kentucky is going to raise another national championship banner in their rafters. Give me Kentucky to win the national championship.
I love these great coaching matchups, and I have Duke beating Tom Izzo early on. I have Duke here beating Coach Cal and advancing to the championship game, and I will give you my championship team from there as well.
All right. Who do you got on the other side of the bracket?
I have Kansas beating Tennessee, so Bill Self makes it to the finals to face Duke.
So you've got Duke versus Tennessee in the title game.
Sorry, Kansas. Yeah, Duke.
Oh, Kansas. Duke versus Kansas. Okay. So you got Duke versus Kansas in the title game. I can see Kansas making a run. It wouldn't shock me. I just feel like this bracket is doomed for the 1 seed to fail. I just think there's too many teams in there that have that upset capability, so I don't see it. But you've got Duke versus Kansas. Who do you got winning your national championship?
Coach K goes out with a bang and hangs another banner.
You went with the home. That's God. You just picked with your heart.
You understand?
You just picked with your heart.
Duke is my team. Like, I'm a Christian Leitner guy. I'm a Bobby Hurley guy. I love JJ Redick. So Duke all the way.
Yeah, look, I like Duke as well. I'm a Duke guy myself. Duke just finds a way all the time to find a way to lose. It's just what they do.
Well, if that's what they do, then how come they have so many banners?
Yeah, but when was their last banner?
I don't know. Let's say
exactly.
2000. Oh.
Yeah, long ass time ago.
They beat Butler when they had what was it? The Celtics guy as their head coach.
Celtics guy as their head coach.
I'm blanking. I'm a brain fart. He's the president of operations. He was their coach last year. I really like him too. Brad Stevens was the Butler coach, and beat them. I think like 2014 or 13 or whatever it was.
So Duke has won 5 NCAA titles. Their last one was, I'm looking it up right now. It doesn't say. Why doesn't it say? But anyway, Duke is just one of those teams where over the last 2015 was their last
there we go.
national title. This team just always they flake out more than they win. And I have a hard time picking them. I hope you're right. I hope Duke does win a national championship. I hope Coach K goes on top. It would be a great story. It would be fun to talk about. It would be just something that I think a lot of people in the country would be rooting for, unless you're in North Carolina. I feel like they're the sweetheart. I think Coach K is the sweetheart of the big dance, and it's just they're going to be the sweetheart pick. I have a hard time picking the sweetheart picks.
So who's your national champion?
I already gave you my national champion.
No, you gave me your finals. Okay,
I did. I said I just think Kentucky's too strong to not win a national championship. I think Kentucky's going to win another national title. Hang another banner.
5 minutes ago, it doesn't mean that's your pick. You got to know who it is now.
No, I got Kentucky versus Auburn in the national title game, and I've got Kentucky winning the national championship, something like 78-74 in that area. Okay. It'd be a close game, but I really like Kentucky. I think that they are too strong. I think they were too strong to be a 2 seed, to be honest with you. I really felt like Kentucky should have been the 2 seed, or a 1 seed, I should say. But I feel like Kentucky is just that team this year.
I don't know who you give it. I mean, you take Arizona out, I guess, would be the weakest of the 4
seeds.
Arizona.
I take Arizona out and put Kentucky in as a 1 seed.
Okay, well, there we go. You got Kentucky. I got Duke. I'm right. You're wrong. It's just the way it goes.
It's just the way it goes. It's just the way it goes. All right, so let's move on to some NFL talk. We've talked a lot of baseball. I know this wasn't in the rundown, but we're gonna throw some stuff in there. We've had some stuff happen. We've had some trades over the last week. And me being a Bears fan, I'd be remiss if I didn't address what was going on here in Chicago. And I've been in arguments with Bears fans because fans are stupid. We talk about it all the time. Fans are just morons. And that's what they are. Look, I would say, and you might not agree with me, but I would say about 75% of fans, might even be more, don't understand the business of the game, right? All they see is fans. Oh, my team's got to be good this year, or my team's this, my team's that. They can never see like the business side of things. They can't see bigger picture. They can't see what is going on. So Ryan Poles this week has made some news here in Chicago, traded Khalil Mack, got a 2nd and a 6th round pick. And not only that, but they cut Eddie Jackson. They cut Tariq Cohen, and he's just all of a sudden now some of the fan favorite players are leaving Chicago, and fans are losing their minds. But what Ryan Poles just did is create $121 million of cap space for the 2023 season. And whether you like it or not, Bears fans, in 2022, whether we kept Tariq Cohen, we kept Khalil Mack, we kept Eddie Jackson, we were going to be a 7-9 win team. And now without Khalil Mack, without Eddie Jackson, without Tariq Cohen, we're going to be a 7-9 win team. That's just what this team is. But now in 2023, we've got $121 million of cap space to go out and build around our franchise quarterback, to go out and find some offensive weapons, to go out and find an offensive line, to go out and build around. We've got draft capital, which for the life of me, I'm still beside myself that the Bears took an aging, underperforming player and turned him into draft capital, as opposed to taking draft capital and turning it into an overpaid, underperforming player, because it's been their MO for as long as I can remember. So the Bears making these moves, I thought it was a perfect trade. I thought it made a ton of sense for Khalil Mack. I know Bears fans can't get past the fact we gave up 2 first-round picks for him, and all we got back was a 2nd and a 6th. We did that for a younger Khalil Mack. We did it for a much better Khalil Mack. We did it for a much less injured Khalil Mack. So you got to look at big picture here. Wayne, do you see these moves in Chicago as being problematic, or do you think it's a good step in the right direction for the Bears?
I think, like you said, long term, it makes sense to do what they've done. I was surprised with the Khalil Mack trade. I understand it clears a ton of cap space. However, like you said, they gave up 2 firsts and now they get back a 2nd for him. And it makes me think of that Randy Moss trade, when the Patriots got him from the Raiders for a 4th round pick, right? Yeah. I mean, they turned around and traded him a couple years later for a 2nd round pick. So that was the opposite scenario. But, it's one of those things where the Raiders probably unloaded Randy Moss for a 4th round pick. And we're like, hey, we're glad we got something for him. And then he had 25 touchdowns receiving. So I do see this as a scenario where Khalil Mack could go out next year and have 18 sacks.
Oh, yeah. And that wouldn't surprise me. Look, Khalil Mack's going to a much better situation in San Diego than he was going to have in Chicago. I'm sorry, LA. They're the LA Chargers now. But he's going to a much better situation there, playing on the other side of Joey Bosa, playing with a very good high-powered offense, playing with a very good young quarterback, playing on a very good defense. This is a much better situation for Khalil Mack. So if Khalil Mack goes out next year and wins the MVP with the Chargers, wouldn't shock me. Khalil Mack is still one of those guys that if he's healthy, which is a big if nowadays, if he's healthy, he can be a dominant player in this league, especially running on the opposite side of Joey Bosa. Now, all of a sudden, what are you doing? You double team at Bosa and Mack, and now what do you do? Leaving the middle open? Like, it's going to open up opportunities for Khalil Mack. But the big part of that was getting the Chargers to take on all of that contract, and that's what they did. They took on all of the rest of the contract. So you're losing $83 million off of your payroll. And that's the big part of it. And I get that we gave up 2 firsts and now we only get the fact that we got a 2nd still for Khalil Mack is beyond. This guy's 31 years old. He's been injured each of the last 2 seasons and he has underperformed when he's been in there. So to get a 2nd round pick for a guy like that, I think, to me, Ryan Poles stole that trade. I felt like if it was me, I wouldn't have given you more than a 3rd round pick or maybe even a 4th round pick for Khalil Mack, because he's aging and he's often hurt over the last 2 seasons. So I felt like Ryan Poles did a great job with that trade. I felt the cutting Eddie Jackson was just inevitable. You're not going to pay that guy that much money to just underperform. And that's what Eddie Jackson has done the last 2 seasons as well, is just underperform. He's not doing what he should be doing on the football field. Tariq Cohen still coming off that ACL. I mean, he was going on a 1.5 years and we still hadn't seen him back. I don't know what's going on with his knee. So who the hell knows, cutting him might have just been cutting your losses, because who knows if he's even going to get back on a football field. So I'm okay with the moves they're making because I can see the bigger picture. I can see the future. And to me, what Ryan Poles is doing is making the right moves for the future of this franchise.
Yeah, and I think that the rest of the Bears fans probably feel the same way. You've gone through a ton of crap. You knew you were going to have to clean all the crap out of the drain. That's what he's doing. So I definitely think that there's going to be a lot of leeway, even if the Bears went 2-15. I don't think anyone would care. They'd be like, "Yeah, we got the number 1 pick." I don't think anyone really cares how they do this year. The question will be, like you said, if Khalil Mack goes out and gets 18 sacks and is completely healthy, and then next year they're struggling and Khalil Mack's having another good year, then it's like, oh man, we traded this guy for a second round pick and we still suck.
Yeah, I get it. But I just, they've still got to make the right moves, right? Like it's been a whirlwind, and as Bears fans, we're always skeptical as to whether or not they're making the right moves. Oh my God, they just did this. Oh my God, they just did that. Oh my God, they hired Matt Eberflus instead of waiting for some of these other guys to become available. Oh my God, who's this Ryan Poles guy taking over at GM? I understand the hesitation from the Bears fans. We've been through, I don't know, 30 plus years of poor management, but maybe, just maybe, they're starting to make the right moves. And what I'm telling Bears fans is, sometimes you got to get worse to get better, right? And for those Bears fans, for those fans here in Chicago, you can think back to a baseball team back in 2016 that in 2012 and 2013 and 2014, they told you was going to have to get worse before it could get better, and then it got better. So this is just another GM who is moving along those lines. And people say, I said that in Facebook, and I had a Bears fan come at me. He's like, yeah, he was a proven GM, though. He was a proven winner. Well, he had the same philosophy when he took the Boston Red Sox to it in 2004, and he wasn't a proven commodity then. He was a young GM that people said, what the hell are you doing? And then what did they do? They went out, brought a bunch of idiots to the World Series championship. It's okay to sit back and be like, maybe we're on the right track here.
Yeah, I think that a lot of it has to do with, I feel I've been spoiled, an embarrassment of riches, right? Being a New England Patriots fan, because all these other teams that are good and then bad and then good and then bad again. And that's the way it's supposed to go. And that's the way it usually goes for every franchise. Whereas we've been division champs every single year. Then a bad year is 7-9, which I think most teams would love 7-9 that are in the top 10 of the draft. That's a bad year in New England, and they come back and make the playoffs again the next year, and they're going to be in the playoffs again this coming year. So it's like, I guess I have a hard time empathizing with like Bears fans because we haven't really had to go through anything bad.
Well, you did have to go through stuff bad. It was just might have been before you were following the New England Patriots. Because if you ask Patriots fans who were Patriots fans before Tom Brady, they'll tell you all about the 80s and 90s when they've had to go through bad. They'll tell you all about the days of Grogan and those guys that they had to endure watching before they finally got to Tom Brady. And I think that that's just where we're at right now. We finally have found, I believe anyway, it's still to be proven. I'll give everybody that. It's still to be proven. But I believe we have found our franchise quarterback. I believe we have found somebody who can lead this team for the next 10 to 15 years and be a consistent winner in this division. And now we've got to find the pieces to build around that. Now, it happened a little bit differently in New England, right? Nobody, at 199 thought that Tom Brady was going to be Tom Brady, but it happened, right? They got the perfect mixture. You ended up with God as your head coach and Jesus Christ as your quarterback. It was just a perfect, perfect tandem. All the stars aligned. And I think that you have to wait and give it time, because the 30 years before that in New England weren't all rainbows and sunshine.
Well, what I'm saying though is that the stretch that New England's had for the past 20 some odd years, I understand Tom Brady has been the primary cog in that, but what other team in history has had a 20-year stretch ever in any 20-year span like this? It doesn't exist. It's not supposed to, and it doesn't. And so I think for me, I dread the day that Bill Belichick leaves. I think that the day he retires is going to be like this kick in the stomach. But as long as he's there, we have to believe that we're going to be in the playoffs every year.
Yeah, and look, the New England Patriots are the model of success. That is what everybody should be trying to find, the blueprint to what the New England Patriots have done over the last 20 years and try to find it. But the reality of the situation is they've struck gold. And that's not going to happen again, probably in our lifetime. I don't think you'll ever see a stretch of any organization running this many straight, championships over and over and over again. I mean, we saw it for a long time in baseball with the Braves, right? Winning their division year after year after year after year after year. and going to a couple of World Series. I think they went to something where they won, I think it was like 20 or 21 straight division titles between the 90s and early 2000s. They were just dominating in the National League East. But it's just a model of consistency, and you don't find that a ton, especially in the NFL. You don't find it so many times where there is just one team that is so dominant who every year you feel is a chance to go to the Super Bowl for 20 straight years. It just doesn't happen in the NFL, and the Patriots have found a way, so they should be the model, but maybe that's the model that the Bears are trying to build. So all I'm saying is for fans of the Bears is to just calm down, ride it out. Let's see where this thing takes us. Give it 2 or 3 years to unfold before you start jumping off the bridge, because we traded a 31-year-old defensive end who hasn't been able to stay on the field consistently for 2 seasons and got some draft capital back for him.
Yeah, I mean, best of luck to the Bears.
Yeah. So another thing that's been going on in the NFL is there's been a lot of quarterback movement, right? So we've had Carson Wentz get traded to the Washington Commanders. We've seen who are some of the other quarterbacks that have been traded? I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson gets traded to the Denver Broncos, and I think that was I don't think that matters at all. I still think Denver is the worst team in that division. I think that we talked about this a little bit last week. So how do you feel about that Russell Wilson trade?
I understand it. I think Broncos fans really wanted Aaron Rodgers. That didn't happen because he said, I'm going to stay in Green Bay. And then Russell Wilson was obviously the next best choice. I don't know if they were expecting Deshaun Watson's charges to be dropped the day after they signed Russell Wilson, or they might have gone that route. But I think that Russell Wilson's a great quarterback, and I think that he's going to go into that team, which is made to compete. I mean, they have a good offensive line. They have a good running game. They have good receivers. They have a good defense. They're very young, but I agree with you. It's easy to look at them and think that they're the 4th best team in that division. But we were thinking the same thing about the Arizona Cardinals last year, and we're like, well, the 4th best team is still 10-7, and I think that the Broncos could be that team that maybe we think they're going to be 10-7, and they go 11-6, and that gets them into the playoffs, and they can make a run.
Yeah, but I look at Russell Wilson, and I look at him over, I don't know, the last 2 or 3 seasons, right? And I look at the weapons that he's had in Seattle versus the weapons that he's about to have in Denver. And you look at, let's just take last year, right? You have DK Metcalf and you've got Tyler Lockett. And I know Russ got banged up, but he just wasn't the same Russell Wilson. And it's been that way for the last 2 years, where he's an MVP for the first 7 weeks and then just disappears off the face of the earth. And his weapons, I'll take, you tell me right now that you would take Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton over DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and feel like that's giving you better weapons. Maybe you might have a little bit better of an offensive line, but it's not a ton better. And so I don't think that Russell Wilson is a world beater. You're not getting Russell Wilson in 2014. It's Russell Wilson in 2022. And I felt like Seattle just dominated that trade. Everything that you got for Russell Wilson, I felt like I would have made that trade 100 out of 100 times.
Most quarterbacks who are asked to throw the ball a lot are going to have a short term, or their season's going to end early. If you're being asked to throw the football 30 to 40 times a game, you can look really good for 8 games and then not so good the last 8 games because you just have arm fatigue. And the Seattle Seahawks, I understand what you're saying about Russell Wilson, but who has been their running back for the past couple of years? They haven't been able to run the ball. And the one thing that Denver can do really well is run the ball. They have a really good run game there. So I think if you can take some pressure off of Russell Wilson by letting him drop back to 25 times a game, you're going to be fine, and he's going to be able to make it for the full season. And yes, I would take Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton over DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett.
Oh, I think you're crazy.
DK Metcalf's overrated. Super overrated.
Wow. Okay. I highly disagree with you there, but we'll table that out. We'll get to back to that in a few minutes. But you say a guy who's asked to throw the ball a ton. You're talking about a guy who threw the ball 300 plus less times than Tom Brady did last year. You're talking about a guy who only attempted 400 passes last year. Now, granted, I'll give you the fact that Tom Brady played 17 games, but Russell Wilson still played 14 games. You're not telling me he's going to throw the ball for 300 times in those 3 games. He's not throwing the ball 100 times a game. He's not throwing the ball as much as guys like Tom Brady did last year, or Justin Herbert even did last year, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Derek Carr, who all had over 200 more attempts than him. Even Ben Roethlisberger had 200 more attempts than did Russell Wilson. But Russell Wilson just wasn't. Russell Wilson wasn't what we had seen Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson looks like he found that cliff that the idiot over at ESPN said Tom Brady was finding 7 years ago.
I don't think he found a cliff. I think that's an exaggeration because he did look so good for the first few games or the first half of the season. Whereas I think when I think of that cliff, I think of the Peyton Manning cliff. Like literally you're throwing for 20 touchdowns and 20 interceptions your last year, but thankfully you have the number 1 defense in the league behind you. And I don't think that Russell Wilson's gotten to that point yet. I think he's going to do really well in Denver. I don't think he's fallen off a cliff. I think you can expect 35 touchdowns out of him at least, minimum. That's 35 starting.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't see it. I see a guy who, in 2020, he threw for a bunch of yards. And, I mean, he still was only throwing the ball 550 times in a full season. Compared to guys who are throwing at 700, 600, I don't think he's asked to throw it as much as people say he is. He hasn't been asked to throw it more than 600 times in a season his entire career, whereas other teams and other quarterbacks have. So I don't know. For me, it's just maybe it's just a personal opinion. Maybe it's what I'm seeing on the field, what I'm seeing out of Russell Wilson over the last couple of seasons. I just feel like Seattle completely won this trade.
Okay. I think it's a wash. I think that obviously they got back quite a bit, but Denver had the draft capital to give up. This was their plan all along, all offseason, was to go out and get a starting quarterback. They did that. I think that Russell Wilson is 4 times better than Drew Lock. So that's why I still think Seattle could go out and get a quarterback to, they got the draft capital now to do it.
Do you okay. I think that I don't know who their quarterback's going to be. I don't think it's going to be Drew Lock. I don't know if they are able to make a run at Deshaun Watson. I do think that Deshaun Watson probably goes to an NFC team. But I don't. Maybe they make a run at him. Maybe that's why they were okay with letting him go, because they knew they were gonna do whatever it took to make a run at Deshaun Watson. I'm not sure. But let's move on to another quarterback here. We talked about Carson Wentz gets traded to the Washington Commanders. And it's so weird to say that, by the way, the Washington Commanders. I still will just, every time it comes out of my mouth, I want to puke. They're still the Washington Redskins to me, but whatever. They're the Washington Commanders, and Carson Wentz goes to Washington. Do you feel like he makes them a contender in the NFC East?
Yeah, because I think the NFC East stinks. And I think that Washington has a really good defense, really good pass rush, really good defense. And they've got decent receivers there, decent running backs. The only thing they were really missing was a good quarterback. I think Carson Wentz is a good quarterback. So I think that it's a good move. I don't understand why Indiana wanted to move on so quickly, because him and Frank Reich have that person, like that relationship. And it was like even 1 year and done. I didn't think he played horrible. I thought he did all right. So it doesn't make sense to me to trade him there, but I think Washington is going to be fine with him.
Yeah, look, Carson Wentz wasn't a world beater last year in Indianapolis, but they dealt with a ton of injuries in Indianapolis last year. And this guy still went out and threw 27 touchdowns to only 7 interceptions. He was still completing 64% of his passes. He was still throwing the ball a bunch. He was still had a high passer rating. I don't know why they wanted to move on from him either. I think that he makes Washington the favorite in the NFC East. I think that they're better than Dallas with Carson Wentz at quarterback. I think that this was the missing piece for Washington. Could they have gotten a better quarterback? Obviously. But I still feel like Carson Wentz checks off enough boxes that he makes them right now a favorite in the East, unless Dallas makes some serious moves other than trading a guy like Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I don't know what Dallas is going to do. I think that they still have a lot of talent in Dallas. I think New York is not going to challenge at all, so they're out. Philadelphia, they're to me a mystery because who knows what Jalen Hurts is going to do in his first year as like an uncontested starter, right? Or maybe they go out and they get Deshaun Watson. Like who knows with that because they were a team that was talked about. But I like Washington's chances. I still think Dallas is the favorite for now, but it really depends on how the rest of the offseason goes.
Yeah, and Alpha Rob chimes in, says, I think this is West's last stance to be a starter. If he fails in Washington, he's going to be a backup in the league if another team dumps him.
But he didn't fail in Indianapolis. So that's the thing is like if he goes out and he throws 27 touchdowns and 7 picks, are we really saying that nobody's going to give him a chance if Washington moves on from him?
Yeah, I think he'll be the Washington quarterback for at least the next 3 seasons at the very least. I think they kind of treat him like he's on a rookie deal, if you will. Give him 3 years to see what he can do. Because, I mean, look, your other options there are Taylor Heineke. And did anybody think that Taylor Heineke was going to come into the season and set the NFC East on fire? I think Taylor Heineke is a viable backup, but I don't think he's a starter in this league. And so I think the move to go get Carson Wentz was a good one. I'm not quite sure what Indy is doing. The first thing that came to mind for me, and I told you this the other day, was as soon as this move was made, the first thing that came to mind was they've either got an idea that they are getting Deshaun Watson or Jimmy Garoppolo, because it's the only thing that makes sense to me when you're moving on from Carson Wentz, because there's no way you're hanging your hat here saying that, you know, we're going to go with a second-year quarterback who just I don't know. I don't see them moving on without picking up a veteran quarterback here.
No, I agree. But again, what does Frank Reich see in Jacob Eason? I mean, if he really thought he was great, he wouldn't have gone and gotten Carson Wentz. So I don't know. We'll see how it happens with them. I don't think Deshaun Watson goes to Indianapolis. Like you mentioned, we were talking about this in the chat, and I don't think the Texans trade him in the AFC. I think he goes to the NFC, and they're definitely not going to trade him to, I think Indianapolis is in the same division as them. So I definitely don't think they're going to trade him to Indy.
Yeah, I think that if there's one organization in this league that would do something stupid like trading Deshaun Watson inside the division, I do think that it would be the Houston Texans. And there are other teams out there that are looking for a quarterback. A lot of people thought that, Kirk Cousins was going to be out in Minnesota, but I just got word a little while ago that they actually gave him a $35 million extension. So I think Cousins is staying in Minnesota. So it really leaves Garoppolo and Deshaun Watson left out there to go after. And now that Brady is staying in Tampa Bay, maybe San Francisco's kind of forced to hang on to Garoppolo.
I don't know. It depends on how they feel about Trey Lance, because do they feel he developed enough to put him in the starting role next year? Or do they think he needs to sit another year on the bench? I mean, he's another guy with just buckets and buckets of talent. So if they feel like they've seen enough that they're willing to give him a shot as the starter, then it's easy to move on from Garoppolo. I like Garoppolo as a quarterback, but he is a game manager. So he is a guy who's going to bridge the gap for your rookie quarterback. So wherever he goes, expect that team to also take a quarterback in the first round.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Jimmy G is one of those guys who I don't know if it's just he just doesn't have anybody that believes in him, because he's shown that he can win when they're healthy. The last 2 times that they've been healthy, he's taken them to the NFC title game and a Super Bowl. So I don't know why Jimmy G gets such a bad rap. I do think that he tends to fold under a ton of pressure. I don't think he's the type of guy who can win a big game. I think he finds a way to throw, create a turnover in crucial moments. But he's still a guy who can get you there, and that's what you're looking for. And so I think that there are teams out there that could use a guy like Jimmy G. Maybe the Carolina Panthers, maybe the New Orleans Saints, a team over there in the NFC South that now has to compete with Tom Brady again for another year.
Wouldn't it be funny if he went to the Carolina Panthers? Because this is a team that moved on from Teddy Bridgewater. And really, what does Jimmy G do better than Teddy Bridgewater? I know they had Darnold last year, but Teddy Bridgewater and Jimmy G both fall into the same bucket of they don't have elite arm strength, but they're very accurate. So both of them are great game managers, and that's why both of them get traded so much, because it's easy to get lost in the eyes of a quarterback who can throw it 70 yards, even though your quarterback completes 70% of his passes but can't throw it over 40.
Well, see, and you know what? Bridgewater is another quarterback who's got to be out there on the trade market because there's no reason for Denver to hang on to him. But I look at Bridgewater and I think that there's something there that none of us know. There's got to be something there because every team that he goes to moves on from him the following season. Like nobody hangs on to him for more than 1 year.
And he's a class guy. Everyone talks about how this guy is like a leader in the locker room. He takes the younger guys under his wing. He goes through film with them, and he's a leader. But like I said, he's just underwhelming physically. So he's a quarterback who is not athletic. So he's not going to get out and scramble because he runs like a 4.9 40. So he's not going to gain a lot of rushing yards for you. He can't throw the ball over 40 yards with a lot of zip. So he's a guy who you have to put in there, rely heavily on the running game and run an offense like New England did with Mac Jones, just kind of run, and let him throw the ball 15 times. And he's great at that. But teams want a guy that they said they can have throw the ball 40 times like Matt Stafford.
Yeah. So I think Jimmy G, if he's going to go to a team in the NFC South, I think he's going to go to New Orleans. And look, Jimmy G, the whole Jimmy G, Tom Brady thing that happened in New England where, you know, Bill Belichick wanted Jimmy G to take over. Tom Brady said, screw that, get this guy out of here. And you know, it was kind of the beginning of the end, right, for Tom Brady in New England, or at least that's what everybody wants to talk about when they talk about that story. And what better place for him to go to if he wants to try to beat Tom Brady than the New Orleans Saints, a team that Tom Brady notoriously has problems with every single year since he's been to Tampa Bay. Can't beat the New Orleans Saints. So that would make a lot of sense to me for Jimmy G to go to New Orleans. They're a team that's already built to win. They're ready to win. And I think that they can compete in that division with Jimmy G as their quarterback.
I agree. And we saw it. We brought up Teddy Bridgewater. When Teddy Bridgewater was their starter, they were 5-0 with him because, again, you've got good receivers with good hands, but they're not deep ball receivers, which is perfect. Just have them run routes and clean routes, and he'll get them the ball. Plus, they have a running back that you can hand it off to 20 times and is an option out of the backfield. So a lot of checkdowns. So that's perfect for weak-armed quarterbacks. And I don't mean that as an insult. I think a guy like Jimmy G would do really well in New Orleans. Yeah,
to me, Jimmy G is just another Drew Brees. And I think that would be a perfect fit for him. I think that it would be a perfect fit for the Saints, who are clearly looking for a new quarterback. So I guess we'll see. Time will tell. We are going to get to another break, but when we come back from break, we are going to talk about baseball. Baseball is back, baby. And we're going to talk about some of the rule changes. They got a new playoff format. Do we like it? Do we not like it? Find out. We'll be back. Give us 2 minutes.
What's going on, Belly Up Sports fans? Thanks for tuning in to the Belly Up Sports Podcast Network. We have some really exciting news for several Belly Up Podcast Network shows. The Sports Stove Podcast, the Rough Cut Sportscast, and Here in Puckburg have all been nominated for a Sports Podcast Award. So head on over to sportspodcastawards.com and make sure to vote for the Sports Stove Podcast for Best College Sports Podcast and Best News and Current Affairs Podcast. Vote for the Rough Cut Sportscast for Best American Football Podcast, and vote for Here in Puckburg for Best Winter Sports Podcast. Again, that website is sportspodcastawards.com. Thanks for being the best part of Belly Up Sports. We are what they are.
I've got an itch I can't scratch, I'm missing a piece that completes a whole part of me, an open wound scar to see. Everybody come here, gather round, welcome to the freak show, the best in town. What the hell's wrong with me? I don't get along with anybody, honestly. I've been living in my own head constantly, thoughts jumbled around, think I need a new lobotomy. Wait, all these thoughts are too negative. I don't wanna get lost in the sedative. Gotta show them what I got, I'm competitive. You know I'm about to go off, I won't let them win, I'll take a stab. I wanna chase the bag, I wanna weigh, I can change all the things I lack. I gotta face the facts, I got a taste in that. Got me obsessed with the rest, I got an itch to scratch. I'll give up everything.
escape my pain. I just wanna be a better person. I deserve this, I just wanna break these chains. Always destined for greatness, true to myself, I never fake it. Seen too many once that I so they get famous. And when I say the truth, most really can't take it. In spite of everything I've been through, I'ma make it. Fake friends, but on my downfall is toxic. Day one, started to outlaws for profit. Now all I do is write verses, no talking. All I do is put the work in, no option. This was everything I ever wanted. Created a legacy off of me just being honest. And the fake ones hate, but it's all to no avail. They wanna see me lose, but you know I never fail.
I'll give up everything, daunting life. If I can see my dream, lay things right. 'Cause I'll do anything, but want a reality.
So is that Diet Lincoln Park or is that like the original?
I have no clue. I have no clue. Buck puts these things together. I just let him go. I'm not smart enough to put half of this stuff together, so I give him all creative, artistic ability, and he kind of runs with it. Sometimes we get, flagged for some of the stuff we play, so yeah, I just let him kind of run with it, and we just deal with it. Kind of like, hey, send me a video of you in man-hour gear and not tell me what he's using it for.
Ideally, right after you woke up.
Yeah, it was bad. All right, so baseball is back. We teased it before we went to break. Finally, it's about 97 days into the lockout, 98 days, something like that, and they finally came together with a collective bargaining agreement. There were some sticking points that I didn't quite understand. Like, I don't know how the hell all of a sudden the international draft became a sticking point. But in the end, they got it figured out. They got a new collective bargaining agreement assigned. People are, the camps have opened. Players have started to arrive. And we're going to have baseball games starting on Thursday. And the season's going to open up on April 7th. We're going to have 162 games. The games that were missed in the first week of the season will be made up as doubleheaders throughout the season. So I was ecstatic. You know me, I'm a baseball guy. I love this game more than anything. And the fact that they were able to finally get this through was fine. I blamed the owners. I was I looked at the entire argument on both sides, and realistically the owners were just billionaires who just didn't want to give up some pennies, but that's how the rich stay rich, right?
Absolutely. It's always been on the owners for me. Anybody who took the side of the players are getting paid too much and they just need to play, then that means that you are pro management, pro ownership, and are not really pro sport.
Well, not only that, I mean, it's just the little amount that the owners were attempting to give up. Like, I mean, I think they raised the collective bargaining tax to like 5%. Like, I mean, look, my prices on my materials for my job just went up 7%, and that's pretty much a national average on markup nowadays. And baseball's like, nah, we're talking about a difference of $15 million. $15 million and all around, from between the collective bargaining tax, between the minimum player salaries, and between the shared bonus pool. They were arguing about $125 million in a sport that generates $10.7 billion a season.
Yeah, exactly. In a sport where owners get 63% of the revenue and players get 37 or something like that, where every other sport's 50-50.
Yeah, to me, it was absolutely asinine. On the owner's side of things, I didn't really care for the way things were handled there, but lo and behold, like we said, they came up with a deal. We've got a deal done. Baseball is back. The markets Now, I expected to wake up on, they signed the deal on Thursday. I expected to wake up on Friday and see like 30 players had signed, but that wasn't the case. And so I don't know when the market's going to open up. I mean, we've seen a couple of players sign. We've seen a couple of players. Clayton Kershaw went back to the Dodgers. You've seen a couple players get traded. I know Sonny Gray just got traded to the Twins. The Twins are beefing up. The Mets have made some moves. They look like they're beefing up their pitching staff, looking like they are ready to make a run here. And so, but we're waiting on like the big names, right? We haven't seen Carlos Correa get signed. We haven't seen Trevor Story get signed. Anthony Rizzo's still out there. We are still looking at a lot of big names out there, and we are less than 4 days away from having baseball games. And I don't know when, like, is it the Carlos Correa shoe that needs to drop before all these rest of these players start getting signed? Is that what teams are waiting for?
I don't think so, because I believe that Carlos Correa is represented by was it Boris,
Scott
right?
Boras, yeah.
Yeah, and so usually those guys don't sign until whatever 25 games into the season or something. They hold out for a really long time, so they're usually the last shoe to drop. Yeah, I don't know what they're waiting on, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I mean, look, Freddie Freeman's still out there. We've heard a lot of rumors about Freddie Freeman to the Dodgers. I think Freddie Freeman to the Dodgers makes that team. They're already a scary team. But adding Freddie Freeman to that roster, if you add Freddie Freeman to that lineup, it knocks Cody Bellinger down to be around a 7-hole hitter. And that's just something that is insane to me because they've got so many weapons, so many good bats on that team, and to add Freddie Freeman to that would be crazy. I really hope the Braves can pull. I hope anybody really can pull Freddie Freeman away from LA. I just think Freddie Freeman in LA would be dangerous.
I do like, God damn it, I do like the I do like juggernaut teams. I like teams that are super teams. So I definitely root for the Dodgers to not only get Freddie Freeman but also Correa and stick him in the outfield and get the top 2 pitchers. And I just want to see a team go 162-0.
162. I don't think that'll happen. As a matter of fact, if Freddie Freeman goes to the Dodgers, I still think that the Braves are the best team in the National League. Even without Freddie Freeman on their roster. So it does make them scary, though. It really does. That team is just ridiculous. I think, 114 wins, it would be something to behold. 162. Could you imagine if a team ever won 162-0?
I always root for that 82-0 in basketball, too. I always root for it.
I think 82-0 in basketball is more likely than 162-0 in baseball.
Well, it's half as many games.
Yeah, true. And we've had what are the Warriors a couple years back? How many games they won? 74? 73. So that's insane. 73-9. You lost 9 games. Did they win the NBA title that year?
They lost to the Cavaliers.
Yeah, okay. So let's get back to baseball here. So we got the deal done, and there's been some rule changes. Some rule changes I like, some rule changes I don't like. So let's talk about what I like first. So I don't know about you, but I like the universal DH. I love having the DH in the National League. I'm so happy now that we aren't going to have to worry about our pitchers hitting. We're not going to have to worry about one of our relievers laying down a bunt in September and tearing his hamstring in the middle of a playoff race like the Cubs did a couple years ago. We don't have to worry about that anymore. So I like that universal DH. Do you like it?
Yes and no. I like that it's going to be equal on both sides. I actually prefer the pitcher hit on both sides and outlaw the DH because I think that it's just part of the game. Hitting is part of the game. And I know we're going to talk about the shift and how it's part of the game in a little bit, but hitting is part of the game. And if you're a pitcher, I don't care if you're a pitcher or not, you have to hit. And so I like that. However, since it was never going to be no DH, they were never going to outlaw it permanently. I like that it's going to be the DH in both because it's just stupid to play a team and your pitcher has to hit here, but when you play them over here, he doesn't have to. It's just stupid.
Yeah, I agree. I think it opens the door for a lot of players that may not have had a chance to see a lineup on an everyday roster, right? You open up an extra spot in the lineup, especially on these National League teams who weren't geared up to have a DH. So now for maybe even just this year, you're going to be looking at some teams that are just throwing a guy in the spot to have an extra bat out there as opposed to a prototypical DH. I think in the National League, I think that, I think it's long overdue. I think it's one of the rule changes that have been long overdue. Not only that, but the pitch clock. I like the pitch clock rule. I think there's been a pitch clock. A lot of people don't know this, but there has been a pitch clock in Major League Baseball for 2 seasons now. They just haven't enforced it. And so I don't know how they're going to go about enforcing it. I don't know if they're going to call a ball if you take too long to pitch. I don't know if they're going to do it with fines, which is what they were supposed to be doing in the first place. I don't know what they're doing with the pitch clock, but I do like the conception of a pitch clock. Now, that being said, once I'm interested to see how they handle it when there's runners on base in critical situations of games, because one of the old strategies in baseball was for a relief pitcher to maybe hold on to the ball for a couple of extra seconds before starting his motion, maybe not letting him pick up on his timing as to when he's delivering to the plate, and I don't know how they're going to utilize that concept, especially come playoff time, right? Because in the playoffs, does the pitch clock go away? Does the pitch clock stay? Are you really going to force a player in the 8th inning of Game 7 of the World Series? Are you going to force a pitcher to adhere to whatever it is going to be, like a 30-second pitch clock, in the 8th inning of a tie ball game? It'll be interesting to see how they handle that.
Well, I think that they should enforce it, and they should enforce it in the playoffs, and it should be a ball if you go over, which is if it's a 3-0 count, the guy walks. I just think that that's the penalty. A fine is stupid. Having it be a ball and have it be an immediate, I feel this right now penalty, I think is going to make it the most effective. And I think it's funny that guys would complain about it, because back in the day, we talked about these guys back in the day, they didn't hold the ball for that long. They just pitched. And it reminds me of like a guy who works at a factory and he's a salary position. And every day he gets up and he goes to work for 40 hours. He punches in, he does his job. But as time goes on, guys start working 36 hours, 34 hours, 32 hours because it's a salary position. And then all of a sudden ownership comes in and says, hey, listen, you got to punch in for 40 hours. And everyone's like, oh my God, we've never had to do this before. Well, yeah, your grandfather did. And so, yeah, maybe, Sonny Gray hasn't had to pitch quick before, but guess what? His father probably did.
Yeah, when it comes to speeding up the game, and we talked about this before the show, and I am adamant that, the owners are, we got to speed up the game. We got to force more action. We got to find ways to get more people involved, and we got to have quicker games. First of all, the average baseball game was 15 minutes faster than the average NFL game, right? But there's a lot more action in an NFL game than there is in a Major League Baseball game. So people don't complain about the NFL being too long. They complain about baseball being too long. That's for the casual fan. Real fans of the sport like myself, you could play a 6-hour game and I'm going to be in tune to every single pitch. Okay. But I understand that I'm the anomaly in that situation. So if you're going to speed up the game, if you want to speed up the game, let's have less commercial breaks. Why don't you go to what, like almost like what soccer does? I know you still got to make your money, but how about instead of having, a 3-minute commercial break, you have a 30-second commercial break, and then you run the ads in the top corner of the screen. You're already putting advertisements on helmets and on jerseys now in Major League Baseball, which is another rule that they implemented to make more money. You're going to be putting signs on the walls in stadiums now to make more money. So you're doing all that stuff to make more money. Why don't you cut down the commercial break? If you're really interested in speeding up the game, take out some of the commercial breaks, because that would really speed up the game in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, or I don't care how many commercial breaks they have, to be honest with you, but just let the game continue without taking into consideration the commercial breaks. So, after the final out, the other team's running out to the field. Your pitcher takes his 8 warm-ups. If he's done his 8 warm-ups and there's still a commercial going, tough luck. Then when you get back from commercial, then it's already 0-2,
90 seconds, minute and a half. I guarantee you people are like, oh, well, when you go to a game and you watch, it takes them about that long to go out. And a lot of times they come back from a commercial break, he's still throwing a warm-up pitch or two. Well, the reason why that happens is because they know they've got 3.5 minutes to walk out to the mound and throw 8 pitches. But if you say, hey, no matter what, we're going to have 90 seconds in between innings, you've got 90 seconds till the batter needs to be in the box and we're ready to start the next inning. Whether you come back from commercial break or not, we're starting this inning. I like that idea. I mean, I that's a way to speed up the game without having to make some of these rules changes that they're making. So let's get to some of the ones that I hate. right? First one that I hate is they didn't do away without having three pitchers, or I'm sorry, having to have a relief pitcher face three batters minimum. I don't like that idea because, number one, you take the strategy out of the game. You take the specialists out of the game. You take the guy who's designed to come in who can get out lefties. Now, if you've got a lineup like, let's say, the Dodgers, right? So say they do add Freddie Freeman. You've got Mookie Betts, Max Muncy, and Freeman due up in the ninth inning or in the eighth inning. And you've got Max Muncy and Mookie Betts who both hit from the right side of the plate. And I've got a guy who's very good against righty but struggles against lefties. He gets the first two out. Now I can't bring in a lefty to face Freddie Freeman. I've got to hope that this righty can get him out. Like, I don't like that rule. It takes away the strategy of the game, which is one of the things that really makes baseball as beautiful as it is, right? It's a chess match. It's a strategy. And when you take that away from the manager, and when you take that away from the game, I think it really dilutes the game.
Well, I think strategy has only come in over time as players have gotten less and less, I don't know, healthy or whatever the term may be. I mean, Nolan Ryan used to say if a relief pitcher came in for him, that meant he was pitching like crap. Because as long as he was pitching good, he stayed in, which is evidence of that game. He pitched 237 pitches or whatever it was and pitched all 13 innings. You know, it's like, that's just the way it was. It's like you came in and you pitched. Now it's like they bring a guy in, he pitches 4 innings, and then they have 5 relief pitchers, you know, 1 each inning, or even worse, 8 relief pitchers over the next 5 innings. And it's just like, come on, man, like just pitch. Like you should be able to pitch to multiple hitters. Either you're a good pitcher or you're not. And what I think this does is it waters it down and it makes it okay to not be a good pitcher. You know, a guy like Aroldis Chapman's a lefty. Do you take him out when a righty's up? No, because he throws 105 miles per hour and a 98 mile per hour slider. So he can face righties or lefties. It doesn't matter. He's going to gas them. So you need pitchers like that. If you have a pitcher who's only good against lefties or only good against righties, he needs more time in the minors.
See, I disagree. I think a righty who struggles against lefties or a lefty that struggles against righties is a natural occurrence in baseball. We see it all the time. That's why when you have a pinch hitter come up, that's why you see a lot of times if you've got a righty on the mound, they'll bring a lefty into bat. And then you would go out to the mound and you'd bring a lefty in, and then they would pinch hit a righty. And your lefty has to throw at least 2 pitches in the game. You don't get to go out and just change them back and forth, but the other manager has the option of changing his batter before the next pitch. So that's the thing that I don't like. I don't like the fact that you're taking the strategy out of the pitching team to be able to match up their best matchup against your best hitter. When you can take your best guy and throw him in that situation, you don't allow the same strategy for the other side. I think it's crazy. I think it's stupid. Imagine if you said, you know, in basketball, right? So you sit, they tell you now you're the away team. Okay. If you sit your guy with 3 minutes to go in the game, he can't come back in. If you're the away team, but the home team can bring in whoever they want. Like, all of a sudden, now you've got a guy who could guard. Let's say you got a guy who's able to lock down Steph Curry. Okay, he's been playing great defense against him. Steph Curry was out of the game. He was taking a breather with about 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. So you brought your guy out and you took him out. And then with 2.5 minutes, they brought Steph Curry back into the game. It's a tight game, but now you can't bring your guy back in because it's a tight game and you're under the 3-minute rule.
It's tricky to make the comparison because obviously in basketball, you're playing offense and defense at the same time the entire game, whereas in baseball, it flips, right? So I think it is trickier there, but I do agree with you that it should be equal. And I have the same belief about hitters as I do about pitchers. As a hitter, you should be able to hit righties and lefties equally good. You shouldn't, otherwise you're just not a good hitter. I mean, I'm sorry. I know I never played Major League Baseball, right? I played high school baseball, but I will say this. I had 0 strikeouts in 4 years of varsity baseball. I didn't strike out a single time. And I faced lefties and righties. And the reason that it was impossible to strike me out was because my eyesight was so good. And like I said, I wasn't a major league caliber player. So if you're a major league caliber player, like can you imagine the Angels pinch hitting for Mike Trout because there's a righty on the mound in the 9th inning?
I can't. Like, but that's what I'm saying. So like, all right, we talk about hitters having to be better hitters, right? And we're running out of time here. I could talk about this all night long, but one of the other things they implemented, they said to hell with the shift. We can no longer shift. It's illegal. And I've kind of wavered back and forth. I'm not going to lie, because sometimes I listen to people bring it up, and I understand when we were growing up in the 80s and 90s, people weren't really shifting as extreme as they do now. And we didn't care back then that they didn't shift, right? And hitters were able to hit the ball over the park. But now you've got hitters like, Giancarlo Stanton, and you've got hitters like Luke Voigt, who are just dead pool hitters. They're not going to go the other way. They're either going to hit the ball 400 feet or they're going to hit the ball to a pop-up to the middle infielder. That's just what they do. And they're complaining that it's too hard to hit against a shift because they've got too many players on one side of the field. And I think that that's a load of crap. I think it's a load of crap. I think that if you are a major league hitter, and I'm telling you right now, if I am a hitter and I see all of your players on one side of the field, my main objective is going to be to hit to the side of the field where you're not. Whether I have to bunt down that way, whether I have to swing, alter my body to swing a different way, whatever I've got to do to push the ball to that side of the field, I'm going to find a way to do it. If I'm that great if I'm a major league hitter, you're some of the best in the world. Find a way to beat the damn shift, and then they'll stop shifting you. I don't understand the idea of banning the shift. I think it's stupid. I think that this was one of those concessions that players made to Major League Baseball to just say, you know what, sure, we'll ban the shift. We won't shift no more. I think it's stupid. I think it hurts pitchers. I think I think that what you're doing is you're giving in and just saying everybody should just get a trophy. Like, I agree with, we had Trevor Bauer out there talking all this stuff. Oh, we're going to do this or we're going to do that now. And, basically making fun of taking away the shift. I think it's a stupid idea.
I agree. I think it's like taking away zone in basketball. I think you should let the guys play zone. It doesn't matter. Again, you're neutralizing certain players. So like a zone in basketball neutralizes the inside game, right?
Yeah.
But like a team like Golden State, you play zone against them, they're going to score 175 points because they can all shoot. So I think the same thing with baseball. You get the shift. Yes, it's going to neutralize certain players, but not everybody. And what I love, my favorite comment on the shift, I think, was Ted Williams, because they used to shift on Ted Williams back in the 40s.
Yeah.
And I think that he had said something to the effect of, he's like, I can hit opposite field anytime I want, but I can also hit into the shift and still hit 350. So, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I mean, people are like, oh, well, they never shifted in the 80s and 90s. And I always say, can you imagine if they would have shifted Tony Gwynn? Tony Gwynn probably would have batted 900 in a season if they shifted him. I mean, he like, and they're like, oh, well, if they would have shifted him, he wouldn't have hit. What are you? You're crazy. You couldn't shift guys like Tony Gwynn. You couldn't shift guys like Ryan Sandberg, like Ricky Henderson. You can't shift those guys because those guys will hit it to the field where you're not standing. And it's the same thing nowadays. You're not going to shift Mookie Betts. Right? You don't see anybody pulling an extreme shift on Mookie Betts. Why? Because he will find a way to beat you. So these other guys out there, like these Giancarlo Stantons, who made it so that it's okay to strike out 300 times a season. The guy struck out more in 2 seasons than guys like Tony Gwynn did his entire freaking 20-year career. It's gross. And it's bad for baseball. It's bad for the game. So one of the things I want to ask you here is, it's kind of a fun thing, right? Like, I want to know, what is a rule change that you would like to see implemented, even if it's far-fetched? Like, what is something you would love to see baseball do?
I would love to see, and this is actually something that they did have, never enforced it, and it went away. Make the batter stay in the batter's box. 1 foot in the box at all times, just like they do in high school, just like they do in college. You can still take the signals from the third base coach with 1 foot in the box, but these guys take one pitch, they walk 5 miles out, they talk to the first baseman, then they go in the dugout and they watch a YouTube video, and then they get back in the batter's box again. Like, make them stay in the box.
Yeah, no, I like that one. One of the ones that I've heard thrown out there before, and I kind of like it. So they went back to regular doubleheaders with 9-inning doubleheaders now again. No more 7-inning doubleheaders. And they went back to no runner on second in extra innings. And one of the things, I was kind of okay with the runner on second in extra innings because it shortened the game. But one of the rules that I've always liked when I've heard it, and I've heard it quite a bit, is in extra innings, in the 10th inning and beyond, you can throw up 3 hitters, any 3 hitters you want. They can't be in the same person 3 different times, but you can throw up any 3 hitters you want. So if you're playing the Dodgers and you get to the 10th inning, you're going to face Betts, Muncy, and Bellinger, right? Or Max or Muncy and Freeman if they get them. And you might face that lineup 3 times in a row, but those are the 3 you're going to get out. And then the other team, say it's the they're playing the Angels, they're going to throw out Mike Trout out there every inning. You can alter you don't have to hit in any specific order. Every inning after that, you can announce who your 3 hitters are going to be, and you can take them from anywhere in your lineup.
I'd like something similar to that, because I think the one that I liked was the ability to move a player from a spot in the lineup to any other spot in the lineup one time during the game. So it would be it's like a wild card that you would play, right? So if in the 3rd inning you get bases loaded with nobody out, you're like, oh damn, Mike Trout's not up for 5 more batters. I'm putting Mike Trout in here, right? But then he's gonna hit in that spot for the rest of the game, though. So you have to decide when to play that card.
That's interesting. I kind of like that too. I kind of like it and I kind of hate it, right? It's like one of those rules where you're like, damn, if I'm not playing against a team that has a Mike Trout, I'm okay with it. But if I'm playing against a team that does have a Mike Trout, I am not okay with it. But yeah, no, I definitely like that one. We are up against it here. We do have to get going. Wayne G, as always, thank you for joining the Man Hour. Thank you for joining us. Always, it was fun. Why don't you tell the people where they can find you?
Yeah, check out Recasted Podcast at Recasted Podcast on Twitter, at Recasted Podcast on Facebook, and join the Facebook group, All Things Movies, and let's chat movies, TVs, whatever you want.
All right, so you guys heard it here. Recasted Podcast, Man Hour Nation, rise up.